the finance minister, Matia Kasaija, announced that Uganda, according to the financial year of 2025-2026, we are like Uganda is, they have said that the tax is going to contribute 37.2 trillion Ugandan shillings in this financial year of 2025-2026, which is a very sharp increase from the projection of the previous financial year, which was 2024-2025, that was 31.9 trillion Ugandan shillings. So we have this kind of increase. It's a very sharp increase in taxes, and this is going to be of course, this is on domestic taxes. He said that 60% of the national budget has to come from domestic revenue to try and reduce from the external loans that Uganda has. So this is a way, or a strategy to help reduce on the loans and debt that Uganda does have from foreign countries or from external sources. And the rest of the money is going to be coming from concessional loans, grants, as well as domestic borrowings. This was said by the finance minister, Matia Kasaija, as he was announcing the budget for the financial year of 2025-2026 at Kololo Independence Grounds. Doctor, we have this kind of inflation in taxes, because it is said that that Ugandans really are not doing that well, and then we are saying our taxes are coming in, and we see they are raising them from 31.9 trillion in the past financial year to 37.2 trillion Ugandan shillings in this financial year. And he added to say that, just like I said, he has said that 60% of the national budget is going to be from the domestic revenue. So domestic revenue is going to account for all this. So they are increasing new taxes on salaries, fuel, and sugar. And this majorly goes to, this goes back to the homes, to the individuals, to the Ugandans who are, living their normal activities. So with this these new taxes that are going to be levied on salaries, fuel, and sugar, of course, to have that increment reached to, or to account for it. Do we see Uganda balancing our revenue generation with our economic growth? And how is our economic growth? Do we have an economic growth that is growing as much as our taxes are growing?
Not that much. It's one of the signs that the economy is doing very bad. That has been the case. And probably it is also a sign that the foreign money is not coming in, foreign income is not coming in, because you're looking at a very big challenge that is going to affect, and still the problem goes down to a consumer, because if you talk about salaries, if you talk about fuel, if you talk about sugar, these are consumer commodities. So meaning that we don't have a serious alternative as a nation. Uganda's tax problem or tax structure has three major problems. Number one, our tax to GDP ratio. Our tax to GDP ratio is very, very low. Actually, they say it's between 12 to 13%. It's for sustainable development. You need to have it around maybe between 18 to 20%. So the tax and GDP ratio is very, very down. And the second biggest challenge that we have is what we would call a low tax base. Low tax base it is indicated by what you've just highlighted there. You have a low tax base. Now, Uganda's economy is informal to the extent that you don't even know how many traders you have in Kampala. We're in a position to cover a story here where we are carrying out a story. We cover the story about how someone can be in a position to get to know how many traders have to be compensated, for the slums that affected their property. And it was very hard for the entire government to be in a position to locate the traders just within Kampala, and it was just only 2 buildings.
Now, I think that was because of the Traders Association wanted to also benefit from this. So I think that's why they were giving alternative numbers.
Yeah, you don't put it to them, you put it to the government, because the government should be in position to have this information. In other words, how do you plan for the people? Whom are you planning it for if you don't even know where they are? So if you have URA, if you have UBOS, what do they do? I mean, how do they get the information? And how do they come up with taxes? Because you don't just come up with something. You must be in a position that the people that you are planning for do exist. So if you don't even know that they exist, because the easiest thing they would go to UBOS, they would go to URA. They must be in a position to have that kind of data. So why would you go and then start counting people? You make them line up. Now it's a sign that they don't have the data. And that's the biggest problem, that our tax base is very limited because our economy is informal. Someone's business today tomorrow they are not there because of the taxes. So it's a little bit very hard. So even when you come up with taxes in that kind of economic setup where you don't have the data for the people, you don't even know who works where and when and how, it's a very, very big challenge. So the second biggest challenge is a low tax base. I've said the first one is about the GDP tax ratio. It's very, very low. And then the highest is levying taxes on consumer commodities. Now, the biggest source of government revenue is income tax. And income tax, how many people are employed in Uganda by the government? They're not even 1 million. They are 450,000 people. Our government cannot be in a position to employ 1% of the Ugandans. So you have 450,000 people that can only be employed by the government. So you have NSSF, you have URA, you have pay as you earn, you have all those are ways that the government takes away money from the people. So you have now, apart from the low incomes, because at the end of the day, no one is paid, a little bit of a good payment in Uganda. Most of the, civil servants, they are paid at that. And they're in a position to come up with forms of taxes. And when it comes to income tax, I was in a position to follow a little bit of this discussion, but not at length, that whoever receives a payment annually, monthly, that's lower than 200, that's 250 lower, they will not be in position to pay any form of taxes. Now, these taxes are going to be so much attributed to people that earn 300 and plus on a monthly basis. Now, each and every average ranges, it's going to depend on how much do you earn as an individual. They are going to, actually, the more you earn, the more, the form of income tax that you're going to have. Now, you're looking at the commodities that someone is paying out, that is salaries, fuel, and sugar. And all these are consumer commodities. Okay. So meaning that there is no serious alternative, because you would be looking at so much things that are bigger than that. Because if you're talking about salaries, and if you can only put into consideration the government workers, they're only 450,000.
So you're basically saying the household incomes, they're going to just have it's going to be a massacre happening in homes. Of
definitely. Don't guess that is typical inflation. That is typical inflation. People get low payments. No, this is what I'm trying to say. People already get low salaries. Two, you're going to levy a tax on their fuel, on their sugars. And these are consumer commodities. Two, it doesn't make an economic sense on this side, but it is maybe a pit pointer that there is a very serious crisis.
Actually, the economic sense it is making for the finance minister or Uganda's, the ministry that handles finances, is the fact that it's reducing on a dependence or reliance on external sources for income. So they're trying to pull Uganda out of the debt it's having with this kind of with this domestic revenue, so that as we the Ugandans actually pay for our own debts or for our own needs that the country has to operate.
But
so
you don't choke people.
Economic sense.
No, that's not economic sense. Exactly. That's not economic sense. You're choking people. You're choking the economy to death. Because at the end of the day, just look at how many people can be taxed. How many people in Uganda have monthly income sustainably within the 12 months of the year.
They think this is already sustainable because they had an incentive when they, when they put out this new financial budget. They had an incentive that they said they gave a three-year tax holiday to the startups that are by Ugandans. So those different startups by Ugandans were given a 3-year holiday that started in July of 2025. So I think for them, they believe that that is enough for them to stand up, get on their feet, cover losses and all that, and then stabilize. So they believe these people that are already earning their salaries, for them, I think they see it as it's already stabilized, since they are ready to work with it or accommodate that kind of money they earn in their normal livelihoods. The
last time I checked, I think it was last year, but Uganda had 5,000 manufacturing units within the central part and most in the closest Kampala metropolitan. Out of the 5,000 manufacturing units, 95% were owned by Asians. They are Indians. So which kind of startups? Ugandans are traders. All what they do, they go to Turkey.
The Asians not. Oh wait, Chinese are also Asians.
Yes, I mean Asians in that very,
Because I think those are people I've seen operate a lot of companies.
So if you're talking about that, you're in a position to give Ugandan startup, and I'm like, okay, which kind of startup? Because the startups that we are looking at that are a little bit sustainable and are making business, they are not for Ugandans.
No, I think Asians. I think this is what I meant to say, that they state that companies that are started up by Ugandans, as long as you're a citizen of Uganda, they were not being taxed for the first 3 years.
Do you want to name some? Because I know what most of the Ugandans are doing.
So those ones that are owned by Chinese, Asians, those ones are taxed. They are not. But our Chinese can actually do it. The company can be registered under a Ugandan. And so that it gets also that incentive. It benefits from that incentive. We can't have something like that. Okay. Our system is that strong. That means if they can detect all that.
Of course they can detect, but there was a Chinese that was captured with a Ugandan passport, and he was called Kato Emmanuel. The Chinese that was born in Guangzhou. And I was like, okay, it's that very serious. But I was trying to talk about the kind of Ugandans are traders. Ugandans go to Dubai, bring clothes. Ugandans go to China, they go to Turkey. That's the easiest that they can do. And it's a little bit very heavy for them when it comes to the customs. Clearance and everything, it's very, very heavy on them. So we've not gone into the industrialization as Ugandans. Though the government has tried to put up a lot of infrastructure, the roads, the electricity. Yesterday we were in politicians talk about that. Almost out of the 2,000 gigabytes of electricity that is produced, Ugandans don't even use 40% of it. We are producing more electricity that we can even consume. Do you know why? Because we are traders. We are not industrial people. So you cannot have an economy like Uganda, and then you say that your biggest source of revenue is taxes, most especially when you're taxing people's income, which is very limited, and the two, you're having a very, very big tax on consumer commodities. That economy is not going anywhere. You're just choking people to death.
And they've said, of course, they said some of them, in case that it fails to know, they talked about concessional loans. They've talked about domestic loans as well as grants. So I don't know who gives these grants, who they're expecting to give them these particular grants they talked about. But I think that's all that comes together and amounts to the kind of money that they need or that's required for the running of this.
No. Uganda has always been getting the money, by the way. Uganda has always been getting the money.
Where do we get it from?
No, they've always been saying that 60% of our budget is funded by us.
By us.
Definitely through the taxes. Then you can also do external borrowing and internal borrowing. External borrowing, you borrow from the IMF, you get from the World Bank, you can go to the African Development Bank, you can go to Exim Bank, you can go. The domestic, you can go to the commercial banks within here. And that is the biggest problem that we are having. They say that accounts for around 20%, but almost accounts for 70%. And it's the problem that we've been having, that almost each and every Ugandan has to pay 2.6 million in order to go in for that. So it's majorly debt servicing. In other words, the biggest budget that was passed last year in June, it was 50% was going to be about debt servicing. In other words, we are supposed to be paying the debts that we took in 2024. And we are carrying it forward. And we still have more debts that we are taking up. We are borrowing. When will we pay for the debt? That's why yesterday I was telling you about these other projects that we are coming up with. I'm not happy. Come on. And by the way, by the time you become a mother, your kids are going to be paying for this. That's why I'm very, very bitter. No, you don't come up with all this infrastructure as if you're going to use them and you don't have economic sense on them. Because what people do, and all that, you need to empower the people such that can be in position to support their own economies. So there is no economy that grows on donation. So we need our economy to first grow. So that's the taxes. Because we have, you've said it's already 60% coming from domestic revenue. But the 60% keeps increasing annually. We had the previous year, it was 31 trillion. Now we have 37 trillion. Yes. So we need our economy to first get there before the taxes or the money they assume they have to take away from us. Actually. Yeah. And you don't wish it to get there. You support the people. I think so. You support the people. You support the people, and yesterday we were in position to talk about agriculture. The president is coming in with a parish development model and all these other initiatives. Even but at the end of the day, it's very expensive. You've borrowed money already from Turkey, from China, from the African Development Bank, and it's heavy on this economy. Actually, those are the biggest, problems that we have as a nation. So what solutions should we have? Because that point of the standard gauge railway that we did yesterday, that one was basically for trade, to connect Uganda to Mombasa to Kampala, the border, the ocean and all. So what could, because if they feel like helping with a trade movement, movement of goods and freight, cargo and all that, by easing their movement, according to Uganda, we feel like that's what's going to help lift our economy. And we are saying even its contract construction is actually just taking more from our country. What exactly do we need, honestly, that will bring in more money? Because, you can't bring up a small, because if you bring up the small campaigns, the money yielded will also not be
it, or it won't be the necessary money or target to actually accomplish these goals.
You empower your people.
How do you empower
No, this country belongs to Ugandans, not to politicians that are going to go tomorrow. This country belongs to Ugandans. So what do? Number one, Ugandans are farmers.
And they've been farmers for
They are farmers, but they are doing farming at subsistence level. If someone, actually, we are doing farming. People do get into farming at a commercial level by accident. It has to be a deliberate government policy that how much money goes for agriculture. Two, we have market for agricultural products. The Chinese of China but how many Ugandans can be in position to support that very industry? Actually, we don't. How many banks do we have? Any bank that supports farmers? Actually, if agriculture is the biggest part, do we have a farmer's farm? It's very, 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 very annoying to have a country.
What about these projects that they do? Because I think I attended a meeting, a local government meeting, I think just 2 days back. And in this meeting, they had a program or a campaign. They have a different seeds that they provide to people in those different villages. So they register with the, I think, town council or local government. Then when the seeds are reached, and I think they actually reached, because by the time I was there, they were saying they were arriving the next day. So this particularly was a maize. It was some sort of new seed that I don't know has a different kind of or it gives off differently. So I think Uganda is also trying to put those kind of programs to provide the farmers with we have maybe a new product that can help you have a better outcome or outputs in your agricultural system and all that.
And this is what they've been doing for the last 20 years. They come up with an initiative, Vanilla, Moringa, they come up with a product and it dies. By the way, Ugandans are good workers. So what do you need to do? Ugandans, in most cases, what they need is marketing. Just move around. You go to Kalere, everything is rotting. You go to Nakasero, food is rotting. Like seriously. Meaning that in Uganda, people can produce, but where can they sell? So you allow Ugandans, you support Ugandans, have access to the markets. The Mobadia was going empty. The thing was just empty.
Hence the standard gauge railway.
Sorry?
Honestly, so you've just said you allow them to reach the market.
Yes.
That constructed the railway to enable to intrude further markets. That is what I think that also makes sense.
No. Now, yes. Thank you so much for talking about the Uganda railway. But let's just make it clear. Yes, we put up the standard gauge railway, but how much in terms of volume do we take to Kenya in terms of agricultural products? A Kenya which is almost a semi-desert, it brings more here than what we take. So that means Kenya is going to be the biggest beneficiary. Not until you get into policy, and of course with the East African tariffs and everything, you can't stop Kenyan products from coming here. Kenya is trading more. Tanzania is feeding us with rice. That has been the occurrence for the last 10 years. Why would Tanzania? Why should they be feeding us? So you're putting up the standard gauge railway such that you can enable them bring more here. Now that's why the government has to step up, because Ugandans have so much tried. You just move that side of Aluelo, there are mangoes rotting on streets, pineapples are rotting on streets, but that can even cost $2 in Dubai. So the Bombardier moves empty. That's why the thing collapsed, because it wasn't making the money. So the thing is, why the Kenyan Airlines is making the money? Aircraft is very expensive. Even Kenya's airlines, they were making losses. But at least the Kenyan Airlines can bring tourists. When the tourists come in Kenya, they consume. So it has to be a little bit. And we talked about the National Development Plan. Now we're at phase 3, phase 4. How do we plan for this country? Definitely. So you just can't wish to develop. No, you must be deliberate with the policies that are supported and are deliberate. Not along political lines, not along tribal lines. You must be in a position to support Ugandans, make the money. Because the fact is, Ugandans have tried, but pineapples are rotting. You go to Kalere. You go to Luwedo, you go to those areas. You go to Soroti, mangoes are rotting. There was an initiative, I think a program that was a government, I will not mention the person because he's a colleague, but was in a position to get some money from the government, such that they put up a mangoes processing plant, something like that. It collapsed. So the point is, the government should be in position to support Ugandans, because we don't have enough money to support each and every Ugandans, but support them by ensuring that you develop what you call supply chains. Why should China bring their rice here? We should be taking rice to China, because you have 1.5 billion people and you're in good terms with them. They eat pork from China, and how many Ugandans can be in a position to sustainably supply pork to the Chinese? So Ugandans can be in a position to make the money, but the government has to support them. We must have a bank that supports farmers, where farmers can go and get money for their agricultural projects. So the standard gauge line is good. We need it as a nation, but if the Kenyans are almost flooding our markets with their fake tomatoes, what will happen again if the standard gauge line comes up? So coming up with the taxes on salaries and what, it's a painkiller. It's short term. But in order for us to get forward as a country, the president has already been talking about us getting into the middle income status. We need to be very deliberate. We need to be in a position to use the advantages that we have. And this is, I was going to say something.
Okay, so that is it for this budget, the budget of this financial year 2025-2026. It proposes new taxes on salaries, fuel and sugar. So we are, so this all basically just runs down to the household, to how people, different households are going to be able to maneuver all this. So these taxes or this kind of increase on these particular taxes was put just to make it able to make our budget be able to raise the 37.2 trillion in domestic revenue, just like it was stated in the budget. So this budget for this year, it majorly emphasizes industrialization as well as digital transformation, and also to reduce dependence or over-reliance on external funds. So this is it, and this is it from our minister, former finance minister, that is Matia Kasaija. And Uganda is yet to see how we survive with these new taxes that have been imposed on us. We'll be heading for a short commercial break and return with our health tips.